Oxford. My name is Laura Curtis. I am the Senior Vice Commander for the Oxford VFW Post 5663, and welcome to the third annual Meet the Candidates event, located here at 20 Federal Hill Road in Oxford, Massachusetts, at the Oxford VFW Post. Today we're going to be talking about the candidates for 3 positions that are up for the election on May 16th. So that's to get the vote out. Please come and vote on May 16th. We have 4 candidates for 2 Board of Selectmen positions. Each position is for 3 years. And we have 2 candidates for the town moderator position, and that's for 1 seat for 3 years. So when we set this event, we tried to make sure that every candidate knew that they were invited, and anyone who called me was offered the chance to either put in a statement or come in person to answer questions so that we can meet and get to know the candidates. So I'm going to say the names of the candidates, and we do have 3 of the candidates here today. If I say your name, please raise your hand so that the audience knows who you are. So we have Mark Twombly Lee, and he is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen. We have Timothy Moriarty. He's also a candidate for the Board of Selectmen, and he's currently on the board. We have John Ewell, who is also for the Board of Selectmen. And then we have Christopher Perrone, who is also for the Board of Selectmen. For the 2 candidates for the town moderator, we have Cheryl LeBlanc, and we have Russell Rowe. Russell Rowe is the current town moderator. Someone gave me a statement to read, and then for Russell Rowe, he referred me to the article in the Webster Times, and I believe that Mark Twombly Lee also has an article that's going to be coming out in the Webster Times. So I'll start by reading the statement for John Ewell. As a 35-year resident of Oxford, I am asking for your vote on May 16th. Currently, I am now serving my 14th year on our Finance Committee, having chaired it for 11 of those years. Once again, our Finance Committee's collective efforts, after countless hours of research and discussions and over 20 meetings that started in early fall, continue to produce a conservative and balanced budget without an override or debt exclusion request. Our town's budget has been recognized by the respected Government Finance Officers Association, the GFOA, of the United States and Canada, in awarding us the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the 2nd year in a row. I am also serving on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, where I personally negotiated tax incentives to attract and retain businesses for our community. I have served on the Charter Review Committee and participated in making final recommendations to the Charter. I also served on the Town Manager Search Committee. In my business life, I have provided both financial and technical consulting services for Fortune 500 businesses and numerous trade alliance groups both in the U.S. and Europe. I have brought competing corporations, countries, and even government agencies to the table to agree on global biometric and logistics standards for travel and retail identification. I've served on a number of boards and legislative committees representing the interest of my clients. Town government has the responsibility to manage town funds in an efficient and accountable manner. It has an obligation to promote fair and controlled business development and zoning while realizing the need to protect the community's heritage and environment. Oxford has a bright future that demands a realistic assessment of our town's infrastructure, tax base, and existing services such as expanding subsidized senior housing for our residents. The Board of Selectmen's key responsibility is to establish policies and goals along with supporting an agenda that allows the town manager to succeed in their implementation and achievement through the contributions of each of the town's departments and committees. Their role is to be the liaison between the community and the town manager and not to micromanage, but to be the advocate and the mediator in attaining the vision they have set for the town's future. As selectman, I will be a responsible voice for Oxford citizens in advocating our town's needs and concerns to both our town manager and state legislature. It's about people, not politics, so now is the time to elect the person that will carry through. I'm asking for your support and vote on Tuesday, May 16th to continue serving Oxford with integrity, thoughtfulness, and professionalism. So for this event, what we did was we gathered questions from our audience, and the questions are being presented for the first time to the candidates. The candidates were not given any opportunity to look at the questions beforehand. My moderator is Sarah McNulty. Sarah McNulty is a resident of West Boylston. She was our moderator last year, and she presented a very neutral opportunity for us to have a person moderate who has no connections to Oxford and is unaware of the majority of the Oxford politics. So in making sure to set our guidelines for this Meet the Candidates event, I want to emphasize this is not a debate, but this is an opportunity for us to get to know our candidates. So the candidates have the option of passing if they feel like the question they're being asked does not relate to the job that they're going to be doing for the town. We're going to give each candidate, all three of them at once, a minute to think. And then our moderator is going to be choosing candidates to answer first, second, and third. They'll have an opportunity to talk for a minute. Once they've reached past that minute, if they're still going, we'll give them the opportunity to wrap up in 30 seconds. We've already agreed that we're going to be very respectful to our fellow candidates. Some of these questions are most likely going to be hot. And so we're going to try to not represent the perspective of any of the candidates that are not here. Without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone to our moderator, Sarah.
Thank you so much for having me here in Oxford today. I wanted to start off by thanking everybody for coming out and the questions that were written by the panels. So the first question that was asked, will be asked of all of you. Serving the town takes a lot of time with little or no compensation. What made you decide to step up and serve the town? And Cheryl, I'm going to start off with you first.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. So the question, serving the town, you are absolutely right, is a lot of time, not a ton of compensation. I'm not certain a lot of people would do it for the compensation only. So why would I serve the town? So 1,000 years ago, my children were in the school system, and I had heard that there was going to be a massive layoff in school. The classes were going to be huge. And it was at that point that I didn't understand why that was happening. And I sent my children out for school choice. As a result of that, then the teachers ended up coming back. And as a result of that, I felt compelled that I really needed to understand the town finances a little bit better. So I then went on the finance committee. And I was on there for about 8 years. And then I looped over to the personnel committee. And it's really one of these circumstances that once you get involved, it's hard to not want to continue to help as a result of that. Because once you learn that information, it becomes something that you can just continue to build on. And I also believe that that if you can, you should try to serve in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Tim, the same question for you.
So I moved here in 2017, and one of the first things that I did, during my closing, we actually got an opportunity to meet the people that we bought the house off of. And the reason why they were selling was because an override wasn't passed for the school system. So that was like my first kind of dive into the town politics is hearing it from the people we were buying the house off of. So from that point, I decided to seek out, just like a lot of other towns and communities, they have Facebook groups. So I immediately went on there and started posting and asking questions about, how people felt about their town officials. So I got a significant amount of private messages from people, talking about things. So I decided to kind of go further with that, meet people, and go to the selectmen meetings, go to conservation meetings, go to anything just to kind of fill my brain with what was going on in town, rather than just listening to the complaints of some of the people and just taking that for what it was. So in doing that, I started getting a lot of feedback, and I decided at one point that I needed to run, and I did a write-in campaign because I thought other people were going to turn in their papers, and they didn't happen to do it. So I ran again and ended up winning, and I think in part was because I was listening to the people, trying to amplify their voice and not just, pacify their complaints.
Thank you, Tim. Chris?
Yes, my name's Chris Perrin. I'm taking this opportunity to run for Board of Selectmen because I have an opportunity to give more time because I was able to retire this past December. My obligation is to coach the Oxford Youth Soccer, and having an opportunity brought forth to me from the community to approach this position as a board member for the community, I really think I can give back to the adults and the kids at the same time because of the fact I'm not being pulled to go to work. I'm always at home, as in being a part of the community. I've done my time outside of this community. So now at 45, I'm really looking to meet everybody I've yet to meet because I was working earlier. So now it's like just trying to rejuvenate what tomorrow could be without worrying about possibly not being able to physically be there. I'm here now. I know what I did in the past. Being a veteran, I served my country. So I now want to serve the town now that I'm retired, beyond being a board member for Oxford OIS and a coach.
Thank you, Chris. To all our candidates, how would you like to see town government improve its communications with residents and increase transparency? And Tim, you're up.
A bunch of the things.
We can prepare for up to 1 minute if you need to.
Okay.
I think he was ready to go.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, a lot of stuff what I've done even before I was elected last year, one of the biggest things, like I said just before, last question, was going to these meetings and getting the information. So me being informed, in turn, I can inform other people. Then I can listen to them, and then, some people don't have opportunity to go to these meetings. So me going to some of these meetings or being in it for the selectmen, I have an opportunity to propose these questions in a public setting. So I think that's one of the biggest things, and that's why open meeting law exists, is a lot of our conversations need to happen in the open. And, that's one of the things going forward, and that's why I was a co-sponsor to public comment, is we need to hear from the public. I want them to come up, even if you're going to criticize me. A lot of things are referenced with the Southborough case that went to the Supreme Court. That's fine. If you want to come and during public comment, say whatever you have to say to me, call me names. I mean, that's what government's about. That's the point of democracy. Not necessarily on purpose to call people names, but if somebody's upset, why don't we stop and listen rather than just think that they're crazy and they're flying off the handle. So to increase transparency, I've already started a few different things, and right now I'm on the committee for the website, which is in process. So we're trying to get more information out, and being on that, I'll be sure that there's things in the usability of the site is good for everybody.
Thank you, Tim. Chris?
Okay. Thank you. Now, for the town's transparency, I know Tim was referring to the website, and I could definitely speak upon that. This is 2023. We should be open communications from our house or anywhere we need to contact our general public. This is no longer the day and age of written letters or anything. So we now have communication devices that we can come together and push together as a team for a better tomorrow and what we would like to see. Because we would actually be in touch with our multiple demographics that are living in town with their specific issues, so we can actually handle what they're going through. Is it viable for the town? Do we want to push on with a particular idea that might not hit all demographics? So with this transparency, I just would like to see a better Rolodex of communication and how we can get to a better tomorrow. That's all I have to say for that.
Thanks, Chris. Cheryl?
Thank you. The position that I'm running for is moderator, and as is generally done, you only typically see the moderator do twice a year, which is at both of the annual meetings. What people don't understand often is that the town meeting is where all of the town's business gets done, and it can't run effectively unless those town meetings do occur. However, one of the challenges, of course, is getting participation for quorums and so forth. I suspect that the reason why we don't get a lot of town participation in these meetings is because it is a very intimidating place. There's a form of communication in place. There's a form of process that's in place, and I think that town meeting can be made more user friendly just by having a moderator who is willing to engage in allowing questions and answers and complete communication between both the residents and the town officials. And I think that's there is a way to do that. It might make the meetings a little bit longer, but when you're dealing with how you live and the finances and the policies and procedures that go on within the town, it is something that impacts all residents every day. And that is what I'd like to see the town meeting form of government, so to speak, become a lot more user-friendly so that we have more engagement going forward.
Thank you so much. At many town meetings, the residents' concern seems to be dismissed. How do you believe you would be able to give the citizens their concerns are being heard, letting them know their concerns are being heard? And start with Chris.
No, I definitely see that through the past videos I've watched where there's a particular inflection being produced by the panel of our government towards the people that are living in the town. So I do believe that there is a disconnect of problem and problem solving. So for us, I have to push for a new group of people to hear the words and be able to interact with the general public who are more in touch with the communication that's being said. Somebody actually has to pay a little bit more attention to what's being said, how it's being said, and really interact with the people who are having problems. And as I've seen through the town meetings, there's certain tones and tonalities that our officials have that become less than positive to the public to see and experience. So I would like to have these forums be a little bit more open and more receptive to how you want to articulate your particular issues and how we should send them forward.
Thank you, Chris. Tim?
So as a selectman currently and before I was elected last year, again, with the public comment, I think that's one of the biggest things. If I'm elected again and if I was to be voted in by the board as chair, I would give opportunity until people wanted to stop talking. If we got to do meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every night until people are done, then that's what we do. And I would schedule it. We have to build a bridge. Right now it just seems that, everybody's confused with what's going on. Not everybody understands the process. Again, I'm fairly new to this, so I don't understand every last bit of it either. What we have to do is create a more relaxed environment. Like Cheryl said with the moderator position at town meeting, it seems very intimidating, for a lot of people. And then when certain things happen during a meeting, people seem to be a little bit more discouraged in asking their questions or watching other people asking their questions and the events that happen, during that. So we have to build a bridge, and we have a lot of community events, and with those events, we can certainly have discussions and be more personable, a little bit more one-on-one, face-to-face with your town officials and to be able to ask them questions, I think that's just what we need to do. More relaxed environments and, get everybody involved. And those people also can't be afraid to ask the questions. It's just not, it's on the officials, but it's also on the same time, the public has to show up.
Thank you, Tim. Cheryl?
Thank you. So the challenge with town meeting happens twice a year, May and October. And the challenge with town meeting is that the commentary / questions you have to focus them. They have to be relevant to the question or the article in the warrant. So for example, if we're talking about dog licenses, you can't bring up you can't then bring up something about the dog park unless it's relating to the licenses. And the challenge that I see with the town meeting is that the town residents believe that the only time that they have the opportunity to speak is at town meeting. But the problem is that at town meeting, you're really only limited to speaking to whatever the articles are in the warrant. And then that tells me that there's a communication issue from residents to local government, which is not foreign to Oxford. It happens everywhere. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't take that bull by the horns and try to find a way to solve it. As moderator, I can't make any type of Board of Selectmen indication or motion or anything along those lines. But I would support that if the town did want to have a more streamlined town meeting, which is just focusing on the articles at hand, that they open up the levels of communication elsewhere so that we can do the business that needs to be done at that time.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. Our next question. Do you think it's appropriate for financial committee members running for selectman board to yell at citizens during planning board meetings and tell them to move out of town?
I think that we need to have, I think there's kind of an unspoken level of decorum that should be held at all meetings. But just like in the past, there was a code of conduct that was getting ready to be introduced by a previous selectman, I would like to introduce one for all boards as a selectman policy, because I see a lot of the same things. You know, again, like I said before, if you want to stand there in front of me at a meeting and call me names or whatever, you know, I'd like to de-escalate the situation so we can have a real conversation. But if you're that upset, you need to get it out, then do your thing. But I don't think it's okay for any official, you know, in any capacity, to do that. You know, I've had some personal experiences myself with it, and it's never okay. You know, these are people, number one, who pay for your salary. You know, so why are we acting this way towards people? And you know, as officials, we don't get any extra benefit, you know, in any of these meetings. You know, we obviously get to speak on some things that, you know, residents don't. But again, I'd like to fix that.
Thank you. Cheryl.
I was thinking about passing on this question because I'm not certain if it's relevant to the moderator position. But then I did think that this could happen at a town meeting where a individual, whether they're an elected official or not, would be asked to leave, or, you know, or would be incited enough to make those types of comments. And I wanted, so from a clarity perspective, if I am elected town moderator, and I do earn your vote for that, I will tell you in no uncertain terms that I will not tolerate that. Absolutely not. I have no problems whatsoever if the meeting gets out of hand, if an individual gets out of hand, if there's disrespect going. That will not happen. I can assure you that. If my kids at home who might be listening to this go, oh yeah, I know that tone of voice. We are not, that is not proper decorum. You can be removed. I would not hesitate to do that. The meeting is to be productive, and that is what our goal would be to do.
Thank you. And we'll ask Chris that question.
Can I have you read the question again so I can better formulate my words, please?
Do you think it's appropriate for financial committee members running for selectman board to yell at citizens during the planning board meeting and tell them to, quote, move out of town?
So I really have a particular ethics, and I get it from serving, you know, from my country. When you lose professional form, you become unbecoming to that position that you actually hold. So no, at no point in time is an emotional outburst of professional form to be held, you know, to be looked up to. So no, I don't approve of irrational emotional outbursts to be a productive form of helping the society. So no, I don't agree with that, if that's the answer to the question.
Thank you.
Oh, is that right?
Can be.
I don't know.
We'll have you hold on to it, Chris. Okay. Next question. There has been many citizen concerns about increased taxes. How do you, as board members, hope to help with the residents with this burden?
Is it mine?
It is.
I know I'm new to to this particular opportunity to be part of the selectmen, but when you look at taxes, being a homeowner, being a dad, being a person that pays his bills, being, understanding the checkbook, I do believe that there is opportunities within this town to actually regulate arbitrary tax hikes on the community to produce a better outcome. So I do believe that there are options out there that we as a community can agree upon unilaterally for an acceptable tax rate. As for what it is right now, I can give you one particular speculation I thought about, but I don't know. Again, this is not grounds, but if there is a flat rate and you buy into the town, you pay the taxes on what you bought your house for. Nothing more, nothing less, until you actually sell your house, and they have to be burdened with the other taxes. That's just for real estate. I'm not going to get into any personal income or business tax because I don't have any ground to stand on that. But I know that I didn't buy my house for what I'm being taxed for, and I believe that is grossly erroneous. So that's where I stand on that. I do believe that if you're going to have a tax rate on your house, it should be what you bought the house for, and you keep the rest of the money and you keep putting it into your house. So when you do sell your house, eventually the town will get the tax rate for the person who's buying your house. That's how I see it on home owning, but I can't speak for business or private venture.
Thank you, Chris. Tim?
So again, the biggest thing is starting a conversation, trying to figure out and talking to these people and try to figure out what their lives are like. A little bit of empathy can go a long way once we truly understand what people are going through. So everybody already knows that we've had so many things that have been voted down at the ballot box. $15 million of roads, the DPW building, $5 million of roads, so it seems like things are just being thrown at the wall and seeing if they stick. Instead of having a conversation between a vote for the same thing, which is lesser money, we're just going back to the ballot box and hoping it passes. These community events are good to discuss these things, but I feel like we need to do more. And just instead of, proposing things, we need to ask the community what they want. And in the master plan, there was a very large survey of 2,200 residents in that. And, 45% of the respondents said that they would not do an override. And if they did, they would only do it for the schools. And we just talked about that earlier, that the reason why I'm living in Oxford is because they wouldn't even do it for the schools. So if they're saying they'll do it for certain things and then they actually don't do it, and then multiple things get turned down at multiple different values, why are we not opening this conversation up? We just keep doing this time and time again, and then you guys complain about the roads, but you won't pass money for it. Well, it's not just taxation that's hurting people at home. So we need to have a more broad conversation. And like I said before, is having community events where you can talk to your officials and feel okay saying what you actually mean and what you want to say.
Thank you, Tim. Cheryl?
From a town meeting perspective, in regards to the citizens' concerns for increased taxes, one of the things that I see at town meeting, and I certainly haven't been going to town meeting as long as some people in town have, but I think I counted it out. I think I've been going to town meeting for 20 or 22 years. But one of the things that I see that occurs in town meetings is that people ask questions, i.e. residents ask questions, and because they don't understand the lingo that's attached to that question, they don't often articulate what it is that they're really trying to convey. And I also think that as a result of that, the people that are being posed the question are not often answering the actual root of the question. And so there's that communication piece that's not happening. One of the things that I would like to do with my background in, finance committee, personnel committee, the board of selectmen, is that I have an ability to understand what the resident is trying to ask without really knowing how to ask it. And I have no problem going a little deeper with the question to get the resident to say what they're trying to ask, nor do I have any problem trying to get the officials trying to answer the real question.
Thank you. So the next question. How do you feel about school funding and the momentum of Oxford Public Schools? And we'll start with Cheryl whenever she's ready.
again, I don't know if that's really a moderator question, other than the fact that those types of things would occur at town meeting in terms of discussions and so forth. And I don't have any issues with people asking the questions and trying to get answers, etc. As a result of that, nor having the people and the officials answer back. But I think that's more of a question for my Board of Selectmen colleagues.
It kind of going in a circle here. I feel like I'm talking about all the same things, but it kind of all relates. So the funding with the schools, like I said, the override wasn't passed when I moved in 2017 or just before that. But the school system is a very large portion of our budget. And at the same time, over the past 5 or 6 years, we've lost over 300 students. I think it's somewhere in the 360 range over 5 years. So trying to figure out why that's happening, and also combing through the budget and start a lot of the things that I was going with was volunteerism and finding ways to do that in the community. It may not provide millions and millions of dollars, but it can certainly provide tens of thousands of dollars to little things here and there that we need. So one of the things we need to do again is have that conversation and figure out what we can do. Because again, the override in the master plan, would suggest that it would pass, because that's what people would do an override for. But I think people are a little bit apprehensive with doing that because of all the other overrides and other debt exclusions that are on the table right behind it. They know they're coming. Again, we need to start the conversation. But we need to invest in our youth, and that's the start of it. That's what the community is going to be in 20, 30 years.
Thank you. Chris?
Thank you. My perspective on this, my personal education history is slightly different than Oxford Public Schools. I went to Bennering Academy, I went to St. John's, I also went to Assumption College. So when I take a look at education, I know money can't buy education because education is actually found through living in life. So the funding would be, is it needed for infrastructure to actually have these kids participate in different activities that they can expand their mentality and produce a better resident. Money doesn't buy it. But like I said, I don't know what particular pedagogy the school is using in this town to actually produce viable adults. Apparently, there has been conversation in the past. I know I have spoken that our daughter is homeschooled. I would like to see her go to Oxford schools. She was originally going to St. Joe's, but there's personal reasons for that. But now as we move forward and I'm looking to get into this, I really want to see what is actually being articulated in our schools to make a better young person into a productive adult. And I can see what's being happening because I am a coach and I am coaching your young ladies, and I really want to see a better future for them.
Thank you. What budget areas would you cut, and would you allocate those cuts towards other needs and areas of spending?
As for the budget areas I would cut, I'm actually going to pass on that. But what I do know that would actually benefit all the residents is more external schooling for everybody that's working for the town in their trades. The more intelligent they become doing their work, I would spend the money all day long for all of our mechanics at the DPW go to diesel school. I'm just using that as a reference. Or whatever that you're doing, I will spend the money to keep you doing your job, to make your job. You become less laborious and more entertaining, to be honest with you. I want this town to support its workers and keep the education going from school to your time working for the town. I want you to be the best arborist that you can be, or the best blue paper that you can be. And I'll leave that, but I don't know what budgets to cut. I've yet to see. Thank you.
I don't know if it's so much as cuts rather than some of what the proposed budget is. So, we do see a lot of these cost of living increases. Biggest thing is retirement, huge funds, the school system, is major portions of our taxes. And like I said, with the countless debt exclusions or borrowing, whether it's short-term, long-term, there's a lot of borrowing on the table. So it's not so much what I would cut, but it's what I'd cut and replace it with volunteerism where we can. A lot of things that have been discussed is prevailing wage law. One of the questions that I asked about Will Field, And it seemed the conversation was prevailing wage, but in my research, I've learned that prevailing wage can be you can be exempt if you're an owner operator. So if you decided to do something for the town, now again, that's just the prevailing wage. I'm sure there's more involved, but in that, you can do things for this town. You can volunteer for this town as an owner operator of a business. So if you wanted to operate something in order to, let's just say, pave a small parking lot or a basketball court, or refinish some nets, at the basketball hoops or backboards, you could do those things. So it's not, one of the major things that people like is the flowers. So it's not cutting, it's cutting it as in the spending, but we can still have those things. So with the flowers, I would say that we can remove the spending on that, and we can bring in our local businesses to either supply the flowers and with a name in the newsletter, the town newsletter, as well as showcase them in other areas, and have landscapers come and take care of them and install them. And then in small areas and medians in other towns, they have these things. They display a very nice professional sign for whoever's taking care of that part of the property.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass on that question. I don't think that's a moderator question.
Sure. The next question that's being posed. What are your ideas for growing the town's economy without destroying that small town feel atmosphere of Oxford? Are there businesses that are more suitable for Oxford as opposed to others? And if Chris wants to start us off.
One reason I moved to Oxford is the environment that Oxford is. It's an amazing rural environment. It has a lot of opportunities of being close to major cities, and also we have, somebody told me we have over 100 trails in our town that we can actually work on. So I think somebody was bringing up a tourism community or tourism council to actually really promote the history that's here, really promote what was here, really promote what's going to be here tomorrow as we work together. So I do believe that there is a lot of conversation in the background to bring stuff here. I'm also on the soccer board, and people were talking about bringing in a turf field in certain areas. My only thing is, I would like to see if we're going to do something like that, spend money, maybe something like Worcester has, a Foley Stadium for our youth to play on, to really display their physical prowess and abilities.
Thank you, Chris.
I think one of the things, there's a couple of things already kind of going on with this, and one of them is it's not, I know it started, or at least the conversation is, to do somewhat of like a small business storefront grants for businesses to kind of revitalize some of their storefronts. But I think one of the biggest things is Oxford is it's mostly home-based. So a lot of people work from their homes. And I know there's already, percentages, 25% you can use at your home for a small business, but some businesses don't really require like a shop type setting. So I think what we could do is set policy and look more into how we can remove some of the restrictions, that makes sense to remove for small home-based businesses. And then, they have the village district and everything. Some of the zoning that's been redone is definitely pointing in the right direction for small business. But I'd like to see a little bit more retail space created for small business rather than large corporations coming into town. One of the biggest things that people want the big people to come in for is the tax revenue. But I think, creating more of the small business and the small town feel with small strip mall type feel where, you feel like you're shopping with your neighbors rather than this large corporation.
Thank you.
Again, as moderator, the ideas of growing towns economy and keeping the small Halterman feel, that's not really within my purview. However, what I would say is that, again, in regards to town meeting, there's a lot of things that occur in town meeting that impact the actual answering of this question. And so the warrant that is put out every, twice a year that the Board of Selectmen vote on, the warrant is a list of the items that are going to be voted on at the town meeting. An article is the is what they refer to as one of the items on the warrant. So that's what they're called. So so many articles make up the town warrant. What I would really strongly encourage to do, whether I get elected or not, is that every person in this town, every resident / voter, whoever it may be, I don't want anyone in this town to feel intimidated by going to town meeting. And the reason for that is because the simple fact of a resident who obviously asked the question, wants to keep the town's economy growing, but keeping the small hometown feel, that can be, those are things that are voted on at the meeting itself. And that's why we need more residents to come to town meeting, is to actually vote on those and have a say on how that would impact their thought of wanting to keep the town like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
What's your opinion of the strict enforcement of residency requirements for key positions, such as school superintendent or manager, chief of police, but also town clerk and other high salary positions?
Well, I think a lot of people have voiced this before in the past that, especially when we're dealing with tax dollars, regardless of what position you're in, you're basically dealing with our tax dollars, whether you're being paid by them or you have some sort of influence professionally on what happens with them, or at least presenting them. So I think just voicing it with the people. I mean, whatever the citizens, whatever the residents want, I want the same thing. So I'm just here to amplify their voice. So, one of the big things is doing another survey, a much more comprehensive survey to figure out, what people want. It's not just about what I want. It's not about what I want at all. It's, I'm here to represent the residents in town, the taxpayers in town, and what they want. So, but yes, I think we need strict enforcement on this. Our charter has outlined several positions in that case, and we need the enforcement on it too. So there may need to be some changes to create the enforcement, especially when some people or some boards don't want to enforce it.
Thank you. Chris?
No, I do believe that the enforcement of being a resident to hold a position is very important, because it actually shows the integrity of how that person wants to be really a part of the town, and they can actually take pride in what they're doing. I do know, and I've seen in the past, that there is a high percentage of people that work for something that's directly not yours. There's a semi-laissez-faire type of effect that happens, and you don't get the clean outcome that you want. So I would prefer, and I know that there's plenty of people, and I've heard that you can't find competency in this town. I don't believe that. I know that you can find the right person to do the job at the right time, and you can help them with it. Because every job that a political person has, they fall under a scientific method that they actually have to work under. So it's nothing that a degree that can help you with. It's just understanding what you need to do when you need to do it. So I do believe that if the town positions are supposed to be held by town members, that's what it should be. And like yourself, Tim, if for whatever reason the town wants to relinquish that, I'll follow.
Thank you.
Cheryl?
Again, I think the question is about enforcement of it and whatnot, and I don't really think that that's appropriate to the moderator position, so I'll pass.
Thank you. Next question. The town's master plan says the cost of any new economic development should outweigh the cost to the town. There has never been any analyst to this date. How would you ensure new economic development does not add more taxes and tax burdens to the residents? Can studies be done?
It's kind of a hard question because there's so much involved into it. So the study, there's so many different requirements that can be held at different committees, boards, and whatnot for any of the development. So it's really difficult to try and answer that question completely. But like I said before, there's already other places in town we've talked about. It seems that some places, some big places, get tax deferments. Maybe we do that for small business. I can't see. We'll just talk about the logistics center. It was saying that would be up to $350,000 a year in taxes, but you gain the same amount from 50 or 60 new houses. You know, it's kind of a tough question, but I think we could go back again to the a survey of the people, and you know that's the study that you need. You know, how much are they willing to accept? And like I said before, you know, with all these overrides that have failed, you know, we got to come up with something crafty to do it because people are just not going to pass it at the ballot box. You know, so involving them in that is the best thing that we can do, because just, you know, the 60 or 70 people over at town hall, you know, versus the 14,000 that are out in town, you know, we don't know it all, so we can take suggestions.
Thank you. Chris?
I'm sorry, one more time, can I have you read that again?
Sure. The town's master plan says that cost of any new economic development should outweigh the cost to the town. There has never been any analysis for this to the date. How would you ensure new economic development does not add to more taxes and tax burdens to the residents? Can studies be done?
The biggest thing about dealing with infrastructure or town development or anything that happens in there is the maintenance of whatever that idea is going to be. Yes, you can do surveys on perspective, future projections on what the maintenance of the idea is going to be, but again, that's all speculation. So you have to understand, whatever comes into this town, who's going to be maintaining it? That's what we have to look at. If we can't maintain what we already have, then there's no reason to compound it anymore. So we really can do the surveys of what we want to do and exactly how much physical effort that we as a town want to maintain and keep clean. Because if we keep adding and we don't have the people to maintain it, then that falls into the failing infrastructure that we have to. Who's going to pick up the bill? Not my kid. I'll tell you that. So, I mean, yes, we can do the plans, but we have to make sure that anything that we put up in town has to be maintained that doesn't cost us anything. Or if it does cost us, it should be in the black. We should be making money off of it.
Thank you. Cheryl?
I'm going to pass on that. Thank you.
What is your opinion of large businesses? It seems in the past people push for big businesses claiming tax income, but then they gave them tips. If business requires more police, fire, EMTs, and work on the roads, and more traffic, what is your opinion of giving the big businesses it?
I kind of already touched on this with a few other questions, but you know, we've got to get more small business in here. You know, the big business, like I said before, we've had some come in and there's been a tax deferment for a certain period of time, or at least chatter of it. And you know, with, like I said, with the logistics center, you know, it's roughly 60 houses worth of tax revenue. You know, or other small business like small retail, just a couple spots would bring in the same. So we need to. The residents have already voiced their opinion in the master plan. They like the small town feel. They like open space. So, you know, bringing in these big monster-sized places in order to, you know, offset taxation for the residents. You know, we haven't seen it in the past. You know, if we're continuously growing at roughly 1.2 million a year, at least over the past 5 years, steadily, and that's without any debt exclusions, any overrides passing. You know, so we've got short-term borrowing in there. You know, but we've already got things on the table. We've got a few $1 million for the roofs that aren't even in this budget currently. You know, so how are we gonna? We've already got, you know, tens of millions of dollars worth of stuff on the table worth of fixes. Never mind overrides to either completely, you know, bulldoze massive portions of buildings and starting over. You know, the biggest thing we need to do, you know, like Chris had said, you know, let's develop a deeper protocol on how to take care of what we currently have, and encourage small business in town.
Thank you.
I do believe I've already, you know, hit my point on this, but I take a look at the road that I live on. I live on Sneed Drive, and I see the multiple big businesses that go up and down my road, and it has damaged the road since I've been there due to the big businesses having big equipment running down my small road. So essentially, I wouldn't want anything larger coming in. I do really think we have to fine tune what we actually bring in to really make sure what's coming into our community is going to benefit the community versus just having monetary income that doesn't directly affect everybody. So I'll go back to maintaining what we have and what we need
answer anything in regards to the question itself, as a moderator candidate, other than the fact that I do want to convey once again that there in the warrant for the town meetings, there are very often articles like this which would impact the way that the town does business, and I would highly encourage people to make a point of attending town meetings so you can properly vote on things like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'm voting for you three.
All right, next question, we'll start off with Chris. Often the school committee has not been seated with other committees and staff at the town meeting. They supervise almost $20 million of the town's budget. Is this appropriate, and shouldn't they be more prominent at the town meeting?
That's an interesting question. I guess I never really thought about that.
We're going to start with Chris.
Oh, well, there you go. Even better.
Yes, I mean, especially when you have that financial windfall to actually delegate within our community, and we are having with the public, we're talking about the education within this town, the pedagogy that's not meeting certain people's requirements for what they would consider to be efficient education to be produced. So no, they need to be there. They need to be held accountable, such as we would be. We need to make sure that our future youth are going to pick up the load that we leave behind for them. So yes, they have to be there, especially for $20 million. I mean, what's the complaints for? I mean, because if you have that much money, then the education should be there.
Yeah, I think they should. I mean, the school committee or the school themselves got a bunch of ARPA money from the state during COVID and brought on a bunch of teachers or aides and a bunch of other things. And they had the ways that they had to spend that money. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, I think they need to be. They do a lot with their own budget, but we need to have everybody involved. And they should certainly have a place at town meeting, especially if they have articles. They should certainly be recognized.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So once upon a time, the school committee always showed up for town meeting. They were in force. They had their place right in front of the stage. There were 5 seats. Very, very rarely did you not see those seats full or filled. And I honestly don't know what has happened over the years. Now, there was a meeting or two where maybe no one showed. But then, lately there have been meetings when there's been 1 or 2 representatives of the school committee attending. As moderator, if they need a personal invitation to come to the meeting, I am happy to give that to them. Them not being there is just as, it speaks just as much as if they are there. And sometimes it's true. Sometimes the warrant doesn't really have a lot of articles in regards to the schools. And I understand that. One meeting definitely does, because it is the budget, which is obviously very important to them. But I would love to see them come back to the fold of town meeting in force, and be there to represent the schools and the students and their fiscal responsibility to the town.
Thank you. The next question, and we'll start off with Tim on this. Will a survey be conducted before the master plan rewrite is finalized? If so, will the residents' feedback be taken into account?
If I had it my way, absolutely. I've already actually had several emails to the town manager's office to do just that, because I've referenced the master plan quite a few times. There was, during the census of that year, there was 2,200 returned surveys out of just over 5,000 households, which is a massive number. And it was very comprehensive. So comprehensive, there's about 8, pretty much the entire master plan discusses it. So I'd like to do more comprehensive. I'd actually like some of the residents themselves to submit questions. That way they can be considered. Because we need to look more to the residents for the questions, because it's what's on their mind. It's not the same thing. Because if you look at the master plan, the 18 individuals who were involved very directly in it took a survey separate from the residents. And if you look at both of those, the one with 18 people that were involved in making the master plan is in the very back of the master plan. And in the front is all the residents. And if you look at the two, the answers are very, very different. So I agree 100% that we need to get us another survey just like that, sending it out with the census, because that seems to be the ticket to get a big turnout. We even do some now. The town manager's office puts stuff out under SurveyMonkey online. So I don't see why we can't do that. It may not be as secure as census, but it's certainly something we can do to get a general idea, almost immediately, to figure out what people want. And it has to be more comprehensive, because I feel like there's some questions that we're missing in the master plan, or allow for way too much room for interpretation of what the answers are.
Thank you. Cheryl?
So the question was in regards to the.
The master, yep, will a survey be conducted before the master plan rewrite is finalized?
Okay.
If so, will residents' feedback be taken into account?
So I think that from a town meeting perspective, if we accomplish our goal of getting more people there and more engaged, I think that would be a wonderful opportunity, especially because when you go to a town meeting, you have to check in, and then there's usually a bit of a waiting period as well. And there's a lot of socializing that goes on, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of, hey, how are you, what's going on, catching up type of thing. But the opportunity to give some people the ability to complete that survey while they're waiting and then collecting, the responses, that would be an excellent opportunity for the town to get some real solid feedback from some citizens who really do care and participate in the town's government.
Great, thank you.
I like that.
Chris?
Yeah, this will be short and sweet. If there's a bunch of people calling for a survey, absolutely, it just makes sense. I mean, yes, no. I don't know if they're gonna do it, but apparently there's a big enough complaint that it should be taken in and redone to actually make sure all the statistical outlining plots are hit and marked where they should be before we go forward.
Can I add to mine for a brief moment?
I don't see why not.
So like I said, the survey was done. So surveys are great, but we have to actually implement what the people want after we get the answers, because currently that's not happening.
All right, and we have our last question. And Cheryl, we'll start you off on that.
Give it up. Sorry, Chris.
If the candidates all speak of transparency and the need for community involvement, then why would we support Article 18 to lower the quorum requirement from 100 to 75? Wouldn't we not want more citizen involvement?
I don't even need a minute for this one. I did see that come through the warrant last week or a couple weeks ago, and I personally, I understand I understand the thought behind it, and that is that you can start a meeting with less people if you need to. I understand that it's easier to get 75 people in a room than it is to get 100 people in a room. I understand where that's coming from. However, my professional/personal opinion, especially as running for moderator, I would not support that one bit. I think that's just lowering the bar. I think the answer is more about engagement and involvement. And I think that instead of taking the easy way out of lowering the quorum amount, I say we do a little bit more work and get more residents engaged and comfortable with coming to town meeting and participating in local government, because that is the purest form of government, and that's where you should expect efficiency and transparency. So I am absolutely not in favor of that. The more the merrier, in my opinion.
Thank you.
I would say, town meeting is this Wednesday at 7 p.m. at the Oxford Middle School. So I say we figure out what happens then. If we have several hundred people come, then I think we have our answer, and I think it's right in the room, so it can't be denied. I don't think there needs to be room for debate on it. So if we have that, and this year the school department is offering free childcare. They're gonna have games, fun, movies for the kids, snacks. So I think that hasn't happened in the past several years, at least since I've been here. So I think that's huge, and a lot of parents have said, it's a Wednesday night, so somebody's got to get the kids ready, somebody's got to put them to bed. But at this point, have fun, have snacks, and then the parents can do the business that they have to do. So, and along the lines of what Cheryl said, we have to allow proper engagement, proper conversation. Things need to be de-escalated, and and people allow people a chance to speak, and then have a conversation. It's you're not asking for permission. You're looking for a conversation to figure out the answers of what's going on. So I think that's the biggest thing is people are discouraged from going to these meetings because they don't feel not just that they're being heard, they don't feel their questions being answered. And if you go to ask it again or have some sort of a follow up, you're kind of not really allowed to.
Thank you, Tim. And Chris?
Yes, I do believe that we should maintain the 100-person policy because of the fact of how many residents we have in town. What we do need to really touch upon, is actually making the town meetings more enjoyable to go to. Thank goodness we have entertainment for the littles there coming up, so you can actually bring your whole family. It should be just an enjoyable time to partake in once or twice a year to actually enjoy why you're living in Oxford. It should be more fun than it is business because we adults know what work is. We're trying to do everything else is fun. That's what we're doing. Don't reduce the quorum because we have well over 100 people in town today. We just need to attract them.
Wow, a great talk today. I want to thank all the candidates for coming and get to the polls May 16th, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
I shut you off. Sorry.
It's okay.